The program will begin in 10 minutes. The program will begin in 10 minutes. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. We have a few more people coming in. Good afternoon, and welcome to this event. Please come on in. I'm Mark Miller. I'm the global editor of Bloomberg Live Experiences, which is the group that creates events for the newsroom that around the topics that we cover. And technology is as you can imagine, is an incredibly important one for us to cover. So for those of you joining us virtually, welcome. And for those of you here in person, welcome. This is my only my second trip back to San Francisco since the pandemic, so I'm thrilled to be here, particularly on such a beautiful day. And I'm also very happy to be hosting this discussion on intelligent automation, transformation in a time of uncertainty, emphasis on uncertainty, but I'm sure all of you are familiar with that. I'm sure you're also familiar with the idea that economic concerns have led to corporate cultures that demand productive growth with cost savings. I think no company has escaped this trend. And in a recent poll that we conducted on social media, almost half of the respondents said return on investment is the top metric management uses to greenlight projects. So with that in mind, today we're going to focus on how organizations can reduce economic pressure by using intelligent automation to create those efficiencies while increasing stakeholder value. That poll that I just mentioned, it also found that fewer than half of the workers that we surveyed said that their company culture embraces new technologies. So that's another focus of our discussion today. How do we get cultures to embrace the technologies that we all know are necessary to achieve the objectives of our companies? So we're going to discuss how to build support for that, for these kinds of automation projects, from senior leadership to employees at all levels. And we'll look at how to create projects with positive outcomes. Before we get started, a few notes. For our virtual attendees, if you experience any issues with audio or video, you know the drill, which is refresh your browser. If that doesn't work, there's a chat box in the bottom right corner of the screen for support. We've also partnered with an audio-to-text platform transcribing this discussion in real time, which makes this event more accessible. And you can access the transcription via the link in the session description. Importantly, we'd love to hear from you throughout the program. So to submit questions virtually, please click open the white tab on the right side of the video window. And for those of you here in the room, and again, this is important, we want to hear from you. So submit questions by scanning the QR code that's on the screen there and behind this TV. And we also want you to engage with us on social media using the hashtag intelligent automation. I'd also like to acknowledge our sponsor, IBM, for making this conversation possible. We've been working with them for, I think, 3 years now on these kinds of conversations, and it's been a great partnership with them. And with that, I'd like to welcome Bill Lobig, who's the Vice President for Product Management for IBM Automation. Bill.
Thanks, Mark. Did you say it was a competition? I think you might have said that. Hey, everyone, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. I had the opportunity to do one of these before, and I think you're going to get a lot out of this session. We've got some really senior, savvy, experienced executives here going to come up here and share their stories, and hopefully you can all take back something to your own individual businesses to benefit from. So I'm just going to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about who I am, what we do, and how we're thinking about intelligent automation and where it's going in the market. So Bill Lobig, I lead product management for IBM Automation Software. I've spent the majority, actually all of my career in product, either engineering, development, or product management. And what I do is simple. I help businesses and individuals leverage automation technology to get more done with their time and resources. That's pretty much what it comes down to. And if I think about where automation has been in the last few years, there was a rise of interest in it that the pandemic created. Back then, it was all about remote work, breaking fragile human-based processes, the need for businesses and organizations to eliminate that fragility, to drive consistency, interconnectedness, using technologies that enabled and empowered remote work, the great wage inflation or the great resignation and the accompanying wage inflation that occurred. I think largely this has all passed us. In fact, I think the pandemic officially ended on March 11th or May 11th. So whew, glad that's over. But what C-suite are really focused on now, what I'm hearing from the clients I have the opportunity to work with, it's no longer about fragility of business processes and overcoming that. It's about driving productivity and efficiency to drive savings, not necessarily to the bottom line, but to reinvest in growth initiatives and innovation to drive the top line. And let me touch on efficiency and productivity for a minute and what I mean by that. I think they're different. In IBM, we think about efficiency as getting more out of your existing process. Same inputs, more output. At some point, that no longer scales. Productivity is about stepping back and really rethinking how your business runs, what your workflows are, how you're operating, changing the inputs to get even more outputs. And one of the things we're looking at in IBM to approach this, we actually approach this in 3 distinct ways. We are focused on helping people be more productive, allowing businesses to be more nimble and agile and reinvent their processes, and improving the resiliency, operations, and cost of the IT systems that those people and business processes rely on. We talk a little bit about business, people. So, conversational AI. How many of you thought you would show up at a tech event and not hear about large language models? Right. I have an over-under with my friends. I'm not a gambler at all. It's like, how many days will I go before there isn't a blog or a tech publication in my inbox that talks about ChatGPT? But in all seriousness, we are using conversational AI to help people be more effective. And there's a lot of fear and uncertainty out there about this. There's articles every day about privacy and copyright and hallucination, if those of you who've read about these things, hallucination being it gave an answer, but it wasn't quite the right answer. I think there's something we should all keep in mind, is that machine learning and AI, no matter how sophisticated it is, it's only as good as the data it was trained on, and that data came from people, or systems or sensors that were created by people, right? So what that tells me is that generative AI cannot produce unique or original thought. And that's why I think it's a very powerful tool and used in the right way to help people get more done in their daily lives through conversational interfaces to allow them to focus their time on things that are uniquely human. That original thought, critical thinking, negotiations, relationships, things that machines haven't solved yet, and frankly, I don't know if they ever will, not in our lifetimes. So that's something that we're doing to help people be more effective. And we recently announced Watson X, which is an evolution of the brand that we began over 10 years ago, and we've been feverishly working on ever since, when we beat the Jeopardy champions, and now we've modernized that and brought that forward to be not only a traditional machine learning and deep learning platform, but one for generative AI. And I give you this example because this is allowing us to bring conversational experiences to our customers. So Watson now is, the embodiment of it is expert system. What does that mean? Allowing non-technical people to get their work done without intimate knowledge or expertise on the software tools they depend on. In my opinion, that's the nirvana state of software. We talk about ease of use and consumability. I don't even want to know about any of that. I just want to ask the machine to do something and it gets it done. Right? When ChatGPT hit the headlines, I feel like technology advanced like 20 years. And I've been working in technology a long time. These things are now possible. And I think if we do it right and harness it right in a trusted and governed way, we can be successful. The other thing I want to touch on, and I think this will be a theme of a few of the conversations today, especially my fireside chat I'm going to have, is around IT automation. Right? I read a lot of analyst reports. There's a lot of statistics out there. I also read earnings reports. And one of our partners at IBM is Amazon. Many of you may not know that, AWS. We host a lot of our SaaS products there now. Didn't used to do that. It's amazing. A lot of people are surprised, but it's very strategic for us. And when the Q1 earnings for Amazon came out, their revenue grew a little slower than anticipated. And their CFO in the earnings report talked about how clients are slowing some of their spend to focus on optimization. And if you look at any statistic, pick your favorite, Gartner, IDC, whatever, they'll throw numbers out like in the next 5 years, there's going to be $500 billion new dollars spent on hyperscaler and cloud. 500 million new applications will be created. That was from IDC. Gartner also said 30% of that is estimated to be waste. Public cloud spending is almost free. I see it inside of IBM. Free in so much as that the people who have access to go provision things and spin them up, they can do so without repercussion. So we are placing heavy emphasis on giving business leaders and technical leaders tools to optimize what I like to think of as their application supply chain. So every resource that's used to deliver an amazing application experience, providing that in the right quantity and quantity at the right price point, not over-provisioned. The default is over-provisioned because it's safer to spend more and have more capacity than it is to not spend enough and the thing goes down and then you get that phone call at 3 in the morning. That no longer needs to be the case. AI can introspect these systems and give you insights into how you can drive those outcomes that you desire at the lowest possible cost. And it all starts with observability, because if you can't see it, you can't manage it. So these are just some ways that we're thinking about this inside of IBM, helping people be more effective and productive, business systems be more efficient, and IT operations to be more efficient. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark. I look forward to interacting with you all today. I think it's going to be a great session. It's an intimate crowd of experts, and I really hope you all learn from each other and take something away you can apply in your own day-to-day job. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Bill. That's a good way to introduce our first discussion, which is going to be led by my colleague, Rachel Metz, who's a technology reporter here at Bloomberg. She's going to be speaking with 2 executives to start with, Joanne Chadwick of Santander Bank and Vaughan of MoneyGram. And we have a third, Steve Pugh of the Intercontinental Exchange, who's running a little late, but we hope he will make it for this discussion before it ends. So please come on up. Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here, and thank you to you 2 panelists for being here as well. I'd love it if you could briefly tell all of us who you are and what you do. We had a brief intro, but just tell us what you do, like on the day-to-day. What are your jobs?
Okay, I'll go first. So, well, we're both Joe and Joe, so Joe and Joe show until Steve arrives. So I'm from Santander Bank, where I'm the CIO for digital transformation. So I'm currently co-leading a transformation for our entire stack. So that combines the channels, our API middleware, through to our core, which we're also modernizing and implementing a new data lake. So lots of exciting stuff, and all the stuff that was said in the previous opening comments, all very relevant to me.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm Chief Technology Officer at MoneyGram. I'm responsible for our technology strategy, our enterprise architecture, and then I lead our global software engineering and product development team.
So we're going to start out a little bit broadly, and then we'll focus a little bit more. One of the things that I really want to hear from the both of you is, how does your company approach automation?
Yeah, I love the way we approach it because it has become a part of our company, right? It's become a discipline in the organization. And for me, there's really sort of 3 parts to it. One is culture, one is commitment, another is cross-functional team. And when I think of culture, I think about it's an excitement, right? It creates an interest in change, in advancement, in automation, right? And driving results. When I think about commitment, we're going to put the dollars to have this team in place, right? And we're going to challenge them to do great things. And then that team has to be cross-functional. So it can't just live within IT organization. It can't just live within the business, right? We pull resources from multiple parts of the business, whether it be legal or compliance or technology. We've co-located them, right, even though they're virtual. And all they focus on every day is the problem set of what can we automate, where can we drive out tasks, what tool sets could we attempt to use.
Cool. And how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Joe said, and I'll add to that where we have kind of made a change is looking at our processes completely end to end. So rather than looking at a piece in the back office and automating that small piece, we're starting to look at the whole, from the customer journey all the way through to the back office operations, making sure that we fully understand, the happy paths and also the unhappy paths. And as Joe said, pulling in all the different stakeholders, whether it's AML, fraud, legal, bringing them all in so we can really understand, what controls and validations do we need to put into the customer flows so that we can make sure that the customer is serviced one and done, and we have the minimum amount of work that's pushed through to the back office.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit just about AI generally. Like, is there a part of your business that has been most changed by the use of AI? And if so, what has that been?
Yeah, I would say we're infants on the AI journey at MoneyGram. And I just say we're infants because we've just recently named our first head of data, chief data officer, and he, over the past couple of years, has been building the data discipline at MoneyGram. And he and I have worked together on how are we going to do more with AI. And so he's hired a data sciences team, and I've hired a few people on my team that understand sort of AI. And he's going to do the modeling, and I'm going to do the operationalizing. Like, how do I take his models and make them, a key part of our business?
Yeah. What about you? How has it been at Santander?
Similar. We're
Okay.
early in our journey. We have had some success with really personalizing the customer experience, so that we're understanding what our customers are doing, what are their behaviors, and then being able to target some of the offers. An example would be our credit cards. So
Okay.
really understanding, which customers can be pre-approved for a credit card, and then we can make sure that that's something that we message them in the app while they're using the app. We've had some success there.
So, like, what kinds of signals are you picking up on, or usage are you picking up on to then, like, make that offer?
So in understanding kind of the customer's liquidity, so
okay, sure.
in terms of whether or not they're suitable for a card, and just kind of their behaviours in terms of spending patterns.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something that didn't work. I always like to hear, like, what wasn't actually, or maybe what seemed like a good idea but wasn't actually, because there's a lot of learning that happens there. So something that didn't work, and was there something you tried to automate and just simply couldn't be automated? Like, what happened?
I mean, I don't think we've had anything that went terribly wrong, but I would say it's an evolution, it's a transformation, it's never over. So we're always learning. A good example would be in our onboarding flows, so our online account opening. Getting the conversion rate right is something that's really crucial. We need to make sure that conversion rate is as high as possible. So we're always investing and analysing in how can we improve the fraud capabilities and tools that we use, so that we can make sure that we're considering every customer, and we can say yes to as many customers as possible. And using the AI tools from different vendors and third parties that we use is really helping with that.
Cool. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, my sort of failure example is this, and it was at a time when we were adopting, as an organization, the organization I was in at the time, RPA. And we had this treasury function where this person had to go out, or group of people had to go out every day and go out to a website and then they would read about 300 data elements, put them in a spreadsheet. That spreadsheet has to get pushed across and uploaded for the Treasury Department, just to see where we stood as an organization. So we thought, that's a great use case for a bot. So we pointed the bot at that problem, and we watched it for about a month and said, oh, this is great. And then we turned our back on it. And our vendor changed the website. So suddenly the bot broke.
Oh no, not a broken bot.
And it was not a great day to be in Treasury or IT that day, but it just sort of gets back to my earlier reinforcing this idea that automation is sort of a discipline and a culture. And you will build solutions that maybe have some fragility to them, but provide great results at the time. But you also have to have that discipline and mindset to say, we're going to keep an eye on these pieces that might be a little fragile.
At this point, when you are talking about automation and your company, how much of that is really automated? Like, how much of automation is truly automated for your companies at this point, and how much is really still involving? I mean, like what you were just talking about, that seems like it still requires like a lot of like human in the loop, which is what we see across the spectrum with applications of AI anyway at this point. It's not like, doesn't just like magically work on its own. So I'm curious, like, what is that like within your companies? Are you still really like doing a lot of the work with humans?
I mean, yes. Yeah, and our North Star would be to have, zero back office. But, that's never going to happen in reality. There's always going to be some, some work that needs to be either manually reviewed by a human. And for us, it's a case of, understanding, what those things are, and then, can we automate those at all, or will they always need to be, manually intervened? Yeah. I don't know, Joe, what about you?
Well, we certainly have humans. We have fewer humans than we had before, but I really see this as a journey for our organization. And it's a journey that's, there's not going to be a destination in 3 years or 5 years. We're always going to be looking for ways to squeeze out, whether it be back office or to squeeze optimization or to improve the consumer experience. And in our business, we're always going to get thrown curbs with regulatory or compliance or legal needs that force us to adjust and shift.
How, for the both of you, how do you figure out what to invest in automation-wise or AI-wise, and how to justify the return on investment when it comes to these technologies? Because, as you know, they can cost a lot up front, and it might not be immediately clear how it's going to benefit you or how long it's going to take to be beneficial, or at all.
I mean, I think at the moment, because we are partway through our journey, everything that we're doing, it makes sense at the moment, and we haven't, had to prioritize too many things. We're, looking at our overall customer onboarding and account opening process, and looking at all the ways we can automate as much as possible, so that the customer's account is opened, immediately, and there's very limited pieces that have to go to a manual review. So that all makes sense, and that's really helping in terms of making sure that we achieve our cost-income ratio kind of aspirations. So for me, it all makes sense at the moment. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be times where we're going to have to kind of do some trade-offs and make some decisions around, where do we invest our money. But at the moment, we have kind of our goals and our vision, and we're working towards that.
You've talked a lot about like signing people up and fraud detection. Are those two for you guys? Are those two of the most important pieces?
That's super important, and I would add into that as well our cyber controls as well, which we layer in. So those super important, and then also on the servicing side, need to make sure that we have all of those customer flows automated. Examples would be like customer disputes, if a customer's got a card dispute, or maybe creating a wire. Those are two places where we're working on automation at the moment.
Cool. Joe, tell me a little bit about how you guys are working on it, how you figure out what to invest in, what's worth it.
Yeah, we have a business leader that reports to our COO, and she leads this automation team, this cross-functional automation team that we have. And so she has a list of things she can do and work on, and she has a process analyst and technology analysts that are constantly adding to that list, and they're working that list. And so she keeps a scoreboard, and I love her scoreboard, because every time she gets a win, like the next quarter review, she puts the win and she shows how much savings. And then at the end of the year, when I sit down with our CFO and he says, Joe, why are you asking for all this money for this team again? I pull out her scoreboard and I said, let's talk about her scoreboard. Right, let's talk about what we've accomplished. And so she does a great job not only of just sort of collecting all of the opportunities that her and her team have identified, but she does a great job of tracking the wins and celebrating the wins, sending out a big announcement. And sometimes it feels like a small win. Maybe it's half ahead. Maybe it's 30,000 or 40,000 in savings. But you do 3, 4, 5 of these a month, and suddenly they add up into some substantial dollars. And so we're easily seeing happy 6-month returns in a year. So maybe we invest $1 million in the team, and we're getting that back in about $2 million a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about generative AI. Bill mentioned it, and I can't go a day without hearing about it in my job because I cover AI full time. So I'm curious, for both of you at your companies, how are you using generative AI in one form or another? If you are you experimenting with it? Is it restricted to certain employees? how we're using it. Joe, I know you've been using chatbots because we've talked about that before.
Yeah, well, generative AI and ChatGTP goes well beyond, right? It's an exponential leap beyond sort of where a chatbot is. For us, we're still figuring it out, frankly. How do we want to use generative? In fact, I have a team, our product management team and my technology leaders are finishing up an afternoon of brainstorming on how we want to use it. But much as Bill had suggested, hey, use my voice, tell this computer what we want to do. Those are the same kinds of things we're thinking about for our customers. Like if they could speak to our app instead of having to figure out how to navigate in our app, maybe that'd be a better thing. So we're still investigating. We have a lot to figure out. Generative AI scares me, not because of what we can do for our business, but what could be done to us. Like I look at some of the amazing things that people have been able to do, like rendering faces with AI, or you even read some of the news story. I think a mother in Arizona thought her daughter had been kidnapped. She got a sort of a voice call, thought for sure it was daughter. I thought, if you could make a voice good enough to fool a mother, like that technology is there. So in a financial services business, I very much worry about fraud and the ability to create synthetic identity. So while my team and my product management team is worried about, hey, how can we add this to our products and make our services better and be more efficient? I'm like, oh boy, we should be talking about how to manage fraud because this is going to get challenging.
Sure. How about you?
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. At the moment, we have a roadmap for leveraging it. But from a chatbot perspective, we currently have on our marketing website frequently asked questions, and we're using some AI for that. But that's very basic. And similar to Joe, we have concerns around data protection and keeping our customers safe. And when we get into using, chatbots for answering customers' questions that relate to, their finances, we need to be very careful with that. So it's something that we're taking very slowly. But in terms of protecting our customers, one way we do use it is we have some tools baked into our online capabilities where we use AI to understand whether it really is the customer logging in. So using, behavioral analytics. So that's somewhere where we're using it at the moment.
I'm curious, just quickly, for both of your companies, are you allowing, are employees allowed to use like ChatGPT or another LLM? Is that acceptable at work? Yes, no, sometimes? What are the rules?
It is. We haven't set a lot of hard rules yet, and that may be a risk for us. Now, a lot of what we do, is not externally facing. And what I mean is we aren't responding to consumers using sort of a free-form response from generative AI, except it may be in the case of a complaint, in which case we have to use very sort of specific language and respond in an appropriate way. I worry more about people putting our assets and our artifacts into, let's say, something like ChatGTP or a large language model, and what that might do in terms of just loss of intellectual capital for the organization, or even risk to the organization, because now people know more about how we work. So it becomes a competitive risk or an information security risk.
Okay. And Joanne, are employees at Santander allowed to use it internally for anything at this point?
We're not currently using it, no. And again, we need to make sure that we're using it in the right way and we're, complying with the relevant regulations. So definitely something, we want to start using in the future, but we need to make sure we kind of tick and tie everything. We could use it, for example, pulling together contracts, more nimbly, or, maybe writing user stories and requirements for projects, making sure we have include everything, have the right coverage. So there are examples where I think it would be really useful and quite straightforward to start implementing.
Okay. Let's talk just a little bit about chatbots in particular, because Joe, I know that you've said in the past that your view has changed about the utility of chatbots. So explain a little bit about that if you could.
Yeah, so I spent 13 years in the mortgage business, and I had a couple of chatbot projects. And the head of the call centers inevitably would come in and says, well, it's saving us about 1.5% of our calls. And I know what we spent on those, and I thought, well, that's pretty unimpressive. I'm not impressed with it. Well, lo and behold, I'm at MoneyGram, and last year the head of our call center wants a chatbot. I'm like, oh, here I go again. And so the team that I have that works on those types of problems, I connected them, said, okay, go to work, make this thing work. And they integrated with some great technologies from multiple organizations and came up with a solution. We deployed it already into 7 countries, I think 3 different languages. And he's already seeing about a 13% reduction in call volume in our call centers. And I shouldn't say this publicly, he thinks we might get to 20 this year. So
That's a big difference.
yeah.
Let's. We're gonna go to an audience question actually, because this is about the bot that we had talked about. This was a different bot, right?
Yes.
Or was this?
No,
is
this
another
is my
bot?
bot. Yeah,
Okay.
my broken bot.
So when the website changed and the bot broke, what adjustments were made to resume the service? For example, did you create another bot to monitor the website changes, or did you enhance the existing bot to check for changes?
Yeah, we actually enhanced the existing bot, right, so that it would correctly identify, and also built a little of intelligence into that bot that says, hey, when you drop this data into the spreadsheet, like, why don't you add up the columns and do a few data checks. So yeah, it was a quick enhancement. Just took a day or two worth of work using bot technologies.
Okay. Also, I'm going to go to a question for you. I think this is a really good one. Joanne, so at Santander, you're talking about using AI to help approve customer account applications, such as for credit cards. How are you protecting against bias?
So we're leveraging different vendor solutions. So it's not something that we're building in-house on our own. And I think it's a constant fine-tuning and iterating, keeping an eye on it all of the time. So, we're making changes now and using different pieces and parts that are available from our vendor partners to make sure that, we have the best possible solution available to us. And then just continuously, working it through, iterating.
Okay. Let's see. We got one more here. This is Joe. This is for you. You said your team is still figuring out generative AI. What aspects are you investigating? What are you looking at? Validating things, testing, security, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we're focused on a couple of things. One is our product, which is really our service. Like, how can we create a better customer experience? And the customer experience, our product management, our chief product officer, she's thinking about things like, I want to integrate voice into our product or service now, right? Or I want to make this easier or that easier. I'm thinking about it in terms of my software engineering shop. Like, if I set up a private large language model and put all of our source code in it, then I could ask it questions all day long, like, where am I missing this? Where can this get better? And so when I think about software quality, can I ask one of these large language models, write me a Selenium script to automate testing for this type of problem or use case? And then certainly when I think about security, are there ways that we could detect bad actors? Because we absolutely have people that go out on the dark web and they buy a list of email addresses and passwords, and then they come along, load them up into a bot, and while there's a lot of great WAF technology out there that does a pretty good job of protecting us overall, they can't catch everything. So what can I begin to add, to layer in to continue to protect our consumers from a security perspective?
So we've talked a lot about AI and automation. I know a lot of people, when they think about automating processes at a company, they also think a lot about job losses if people aren't needed to do certain things. So has this been something that your company has faced? And if so, how? What has happened?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's anxiety about that for sure. But I think with automation, as somebody else said it earlier, there's always going to be the need for humans, and it means that we can divert our teammates to more kind of high value customer interactions, working through more complex cases with customers. So from that perspective, it's don't be afraid of it. This is an opportunity to kind of reskill, upskill. So I think we should look at it in a positive light.
Okay.
Yeah, our story is similar. The heads are slowly being lost primarily through attrition.
Okay.
Then we do use a lot of vendor partners for BPO type services. So when we go to renew those contracts or look at the next year, we just sort of begin to draw down the amount of labor that we need from those partners. And so it's been fairly benign without having to cut or disrupt someone's life. And like Joe said, we look for ways to upskill people, give them different opportunities, or if they leave, we don't backfill them.
Okay. One thing that I was really curious about is what your company's biggest automation-related challenge is right now. Like, what is the thing you're thinking about the most regarding automation and AI right now?
Well, I mean, I've talked a lot about the customer-facing side of things, and I would say we're investing and we want to spend time on some of our more IT enablers. So, deployment automation, for example, is something that's really close to my heart because we still have a lot of manual deployments, which it take time, are prone to error, and they're just frustrating for our developers. They want to develop cool stuff and get it out there into production. So automating, our deployments is going to give us a real uplift. Means that we can, deploy value to our customers faster, which will be awesome. And then in addition to that, other things like, I think Joe mentioned testing automation as well, so we can get better test coverage. So that's something we're investing in as well. And also observability, making sure we have the right tools to be monitoring our applications and making sure we're being proactive and catching things before they go wrong.
Okay. What about for you?
Yeah, there's a number of areas where we're looking to automate. One is pricing. We do business in 200 countries, and it's a very competitive landscape. And how do we update pricing in an archaic platform, and how do we do that quickly, right? And how do we do it in a way that we know we're not going to break something in such a way that customers get a great benefit, but we're losing in the end.
Sure.
That's an example of where we're working to improve. Another example is how we market to our customers. It's still somewhat of a manual process today where our data analytics team is hoarding over the data and they're working with the marketing team and they're trying to figure out, do we send this campaign, do we not? Like if we could accelerate some of that development of customer segmentation.
Cool. Thank you both so much for being here. It was really nice to speak to you about this. I'd like to welcome back IBM's Bill Lobig for a conversation with Francesco Sartini, the Chief Innovation Officer at Blue IT.
I love that. Does Watson have ChatGPT? Thanks, everyone. So, Francesco, thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming all this way. So, Francesco Sartini is joining us from Blue IT, in Italy. So, Blue IT, I understand it helps companies digitally transform with sustainability in mind. I think a lot of people talk about sustainability because it's like, babies, right? Everybody loves it's good, right? Nobody wants to say they don't want to be more sustainable. Maybe you can talk about what you're doing at Blue IT and what your role in that is.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, Blue IT is an IT outsourcing company which is focused mainly on managed services, but we are also a benefit company, so we feel very comfortable with these sustainability topics. And exactly going in the direction of being sustainable, we are convinced that the business must be profitable and sustainable. So in conjunction with the partnership of IBM, we have introduced this tool because the key topic here is that we are not sure we can save the world with the reduction of the IT environment. That's probably what we cannot do. Our customers are looking for additional resources, are looking for additional data center and stuff like this. But what we really can do is to reduce in an efficient way the number of resources used by our infrastructures. And as I said before, in Blue IT, what we have adopted is using mainly, someone of you are familiar with Turbonomic, Instana, set of tools that can give us the chance to have a very intense view of the IT environment of the customers from the application layer to the infrastructure layer. So we can proactively manage all the resources involved in the IT services, and we can reduce waste, and we can also keeping balance between resources, the right size of resources, and the application sorry, application performance, which is crucial for this, let's say, carbon footprint reduction. This is the big challenge that we have today, and this is what we are dealing with the partnership with IBM.
That's great. It's really exciting to see you've evolved from just running your clients' operations and data centers to helping them optimize and be more sustainable and effective along the way. Maybe you could elaborate a little bit on some of the specific benefits your clients have seen in these examples.
Well, what we did is really moving from the traditional IT operations to the AI ops, so the real operations supported by AI tools. And again, Turbonomics and Instana are probably one of the examples, the most relevant examples from this point of view. And what we did is a real intelligent automation project, because we completely changed the mindset of our organization, because we changed the set of services provided to the customers, because with these tools we can enlarge the topics of to be provided to the customer. Imagine, for example, that we as a managed services IT infrastructure people, we were not able to combine information from monitoring for what is concerning the infrastructure and the application. With Instana, we can combine these two views, application and infrastructure. But we also change in the sense that we are more effective on the market, because IT outsourcing unfortunately sounds like such a kind of commodities for the time being. So we can really differentiate our offer on the market, being one of the first one adopting this AI ops approach. Finally, for our employees, because one of the big advantages of adopting these AI tools is that we can reduce the repetitive task, we can reduce the low-profile task. So really, our people can be focused on creating value for the customer. As we say, the crucial challenge to our customer is the digital transformation, but also the sustainability topics. Let me say, from a certain point of view, there is no better period of being an IT outsourcer, because it's amazing. We are in front of the customer. I never expect to be in front of the customer talking about, sustainability, carbon footprint, FinOps approach. This is something that it was not possible, let me say, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and I think that the FinOps point you brought up is a really hot topic these days. I see a lot of heads nodding. It's, as I mentioned in my talk in the beginning, the hyperscaler cloud spend is just enormous, right? And it's getting to the point. In fact, I read an article by Andreessen and Horowitz, who's a Bay Area VC. You probably know them. They put out thought leadership articles. I think it's probably a controversial one, but it was called the $1 trillion paradox, and they talked about repatriation of workloads to on-prem because of this problem. But I think with the technologies and approaches you're described, it doesn't need to be that way, right? We can get this thing under control. So that's really great. Maybe one of the other things the audience might be curious about is, to realize these benefits, what was the time to value? Like, how hard was it to get this stuff up and running and to get your first quick win? And how did you scale it and build on that momentum?
Well, first of all, we are absolutely proud of the results that we achieve for our clients. Let me put in this way, what you mentioned is really a key topic for what we did. One of the, let me say, measurement that we deploy in the very first customer that we deploy Turbonomic. Turbonomic is very easy from a setup standpoint. So in few clicks you can have data collected, and Turbonomic starts suggesting improvement for your IT infrastructure. That's what Turbonomic is doing. And the very first time we deploy this for the customer, it was such a kind of pilot, let me put in this way. And the interesting thing is that immediately after the setup, we realized that customer has 10% of overestimated resources, so they can immediately reduce 10% of the resources, so they can really be more effective, as I said before, also from a sustainability standpoint. And it was such a kind of wow effect for the customer, because it was something, I mean, they never imagined could be possible. To give you another example is about mean time to resolve. Mean time to resolve is the moment between the problem rise and the moment in which the problem is fixed. And you know, in some cases, because of the complexity of the environment of the customer, it could have impact on you know, business, money, and stuff like this. So we significantly reduce the mean time to recover, because for one simple reason, because basically the root cause analysis is directly made by tools. So we use this, for example, Istana can support you in understanding where the problem is, which database is impacted, which query is broken, and stuff like this. So we can really support the automated root cause analysis, so that we can really go focusing on solving the problem. We calculate the reduction of this mean time to recover, and we discovered that we have 50% reduction in the mean time to recover for using this AI Ops approach.
Wow. Yeah, and that combination of Instana and Turbonomics really powerful, because it brings the full stack tracing and the root cause analysis with the capacity consideration, which is what Turbonomic is doing. 50%, that's a really fantastic number. You know, one of the things that I wonder is going forward, you know, how do you see this expanding and growing and building upon the success that you had with these tools in IBM?
Yeah, there are so many things. You know, every day we can see a new AI tool running, coming. We talk about ChatGPT and stuff like this. So there are a lot of things to do. But just to be very pragmatic and to answer to your question in a very pragmatic way, again, let me do a couple of examples. The first one is software-defined network. Software-defined network is really state-of-the-art today. And if you look at the software-defined network, is a bunch of resources that need to be managed proactively, and at the end of the day, we must guarantee the overall performance of the network. So again, it's more or less like what we talk about for the IT infrastructure. There is a tool named SaveOne, which is doing exactly this balance, and that's what we want to include in our offer to the customer. The second example is about software licenses. At the end of the day, software licenses could be a mess for the customer. Sometimes they lose control. And again, this is not more related to the sustainability of these resources, I mean software licenses, but it's more related to the overall efficiency of the business, of the IT support of the business for the client. So we know there is Flexera, which is another tool supported by IBM, which is exactly dealing this bench of resources, which is the software licenses, and that's the other topic that we want to address as soon as possible.
It's really amazing to see how you're building upon and expanding this suite of IT automation products we have together. You know, just in closing, there's one other thing that you and I were talking about that was very profound to me when I heard it. So Turbonomic helps right-size your workload and achieve cost savings through that. Maybe you need to expand it because you're under provision, but you have different performance problem in that scenario. And this profound thing was like, you know, Turbonomic saved me $500,000 this year in compute usage. But the more profound next level thing is it didn't save me 500,000, or you, I should say, 500,000 in one shot. It saved $100 through 5,000 actions, right? And this gets in back to the human labor savings and helping people be more effective. No IT operators are going and finding all these little $100 tweaks to the cloud spend things. So really powerful story, and we appreciate your time and your business. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you to you.
Thanks, Francesco.
Wanted to have a case study to talk about how one company is using intelligent automation, as we've been talking about today. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Cynthia Stoddard, who's the Chief Information Officer for Adobe, a company obviously very well known. Cynthia. Thank you. Have a seat. So first of all, I think it'd be helpful just to start with a little bit of a sense of what your day-to-day role is like as the CIO of a large tech company like Adobe.
Great. Well, it depends what day it is,
Right.
for sure. But I can give you an overview. I would say that it does depend on the day. There are some days that are very deep into project reviews. I do that actually weekly. We call it an interlock meeting. So we have a roadmap, we have a plan, and there's a whole series of inspections. So that's one type of a day. Another type of a day revolves around reliability. Part of my responsibility is to run the infrastructure for the company and also run the infrastructure for the clouds that we have, the Document Cloud, the Creative Cloud, and the Experience Cloud. So we dive deep into reliability and what the engineering teams are doing. A third component I would say is the financial component and looking at how we run IT as a business, but also the efficiency of how we run our clouds and how we run engineering is another component. And then I would say the last, which is probably the most important, is the relationships with the business. And understanding what the business plans are, how they're changing, how we need to support them, how my team can jump in and add value, and also looking at different areas that might be problematic and where we can actually inject automation and innovation to help the business scale and run more effectively.
As someone referenced earlier, we're emerging from this enormous shock to not just the global economy, but to every company basically on Earth, as well as our own personal lives as we emerge from this pandemic. I know in previous addresses, you've talked about how the pandemic did lead companies to be bold in thinking about how to transform their businesses. What was that like at Adobe?
Yeah, so the pandemic, we had to click over, over a weekend and come online. And I have to say that morning, I was like a little bit on edge, and I was thought I'd get a lot of hate mail, and all I got was compliments. The team, we had been prepared. We had been prepared because we prepared for the California fires a year ago, so we had exercises there. And I had just come back from a trip to India, and it felt like SARS. I was CIO at APL during SARS, and we did a lot of work there to prepare the company for working remote during that pandemic that was within Asia. So we shifted infrastructure around. We did different simulations, and we did a lot of preparation over the week. And I would say that communications was one of the most important, in addition to the technology, the most important. We set up Slack channels so that people could communicate. We had help, FAQs.
More so than in the past. More.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yes, we used to have help desks. I mean, we still have a help desk, but during the pandemic, the help desk went away. We replaced it with first with a Slack channel that people could communicate, and we would answer. Our help desk would answer. But then we noticed that the questions were pretty repetitive. So we were able to use bots to answer it. So we injected automation, and help desk went away. And one of the things that actually amazed me was how fast my team could respond and do things in a different way. I mean, we had the pandemic started in March. In June, we bring interns on board, right? Like over 1,000 interns. And how are we going to issue equipment? How are they going to work? And in the past, it would have been, well, we're going to do a POC, we're going to bring these vendors in, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and then maybe 9 months later we have a solution. They crafted a solution, basically within a few weeks that was secure, and we were able to bring interns. So I think the pandemic helped people work in a different way, so that they could be innovative and creative without these long drawn steps that we would do in the past.
Has that continued as we've emerged?
Yes, it has continued. It has continued. One thing I think I can talk about, and this was pre-pandemic, but we've expanded it during the pandemic and post-pandemic, is we have a lab in one of our buildings called Lab 82. And we named it Lab 82 because 82 is the year Adobe was born. And the founders of Adobe felt that innovation could come from anywhere in the company. And that's what we've been trying to do with Lab 82 is innovate different ways of working. So pre-pandemic, we started by experimenting with different tables, different types of technology. And we found that a lot of the technology that we were going to deploy for collaboration would not have worked. And we saw that. Right. So, yeah, I think one of the panels was like, okay, what didn't work?
What didn't work?
Right. Why didn't it work? Well, we discovered this in our lab, and it's like, people aren't going to use this, so let's get rid of it, right? Because we opened this up to workers to use so that we could observe how it was used, whether it was effective, and to get their comments before we did big deployments, mass deployments. So that's how we learned, and we're still using that to model hybrid workplace, but we've expanded it with another area that's in a different building that we call the garage, and the two kind of mimic a hybrid workplace. So we have the Lab 82 and the workshop in the garage, right? And we're testing out different camera technology, different collaboration technology, how we can take a conference room and then split it up so that people do remain in a box like they did. Because, if people go to a conference room, you lose their name, right? You lose that big picture. And we want to bring that back. So, yeah, so the experimentation has continued on, absolutely.
You mentioned this as something that emerged in the pandemic, which is, again, the use of automation to enhance work, to make things work, basically. What are some of the biggest changes? And, well, let me start first by asking, I think you'll say yes, but did the pandemic hasten the movement to automate more work at Adobe?
We couldn't go into buildings, right?
Right.
I mean, nobody could go into a building, so we had to look at different ways of doing things, and there are challenges. There are challenges geographically too, because India has certain rules about how you do things. So yeah, it absolutely did, bring forward how we think about automation and how we can do things differently. We looked at tasks that humans were doing and saying, okay, can we automate those with RPA? And we absolutely did. We looked at finance areas, and how we could take paper that was coming in and convert it to images so that we could electronically process it versus what was coming in the past. So we did a lot of different things. We looked at our payables area. We looked at our procurement area. That was a big one for us. Somebody mentioned, I think in the past, I think you mentioned, right, looking at treasury and things like that. So there was a lot of different things that we looked at and applied RPA and automation. And our customer support area is another area where, with the workers going remote, we had to look at different ways of working and how we connect them in a secure environment. And this is all done very quickly.
How do you keep the momentum going to continue to innovate?
That's a great question. So what we've done is we have different innovation hackathon days that we do in different ways. So actually there's one going on today in my data area. So we have responsible for our data infrastructure. So they're running an innovation hackathon today, and we'll have a winner or a series of winners, and tomorrow we will be presenting the prizes or the awards to the winners of that hackathon. But we've done it in customer support. We've done it in many different areas to bring people together. We've done it internally with our people, but we've also done it by bringing different technology partners to the table where they partner with some of our teams. And the ideas are great. I mean, people come up with great ideas. We have judges, and we actually implement the top winners into our production environments. So that's how we keep it alive.
I think that's a good segue into something that some of the other panelists and executives have talked about, which is how do you get your workforce to embrace this kind of innovative technology and change, because change is hard, change is
Yes.
scary.
Right.
We've just emerged from a really scary period of time. So how do you make sure that your workforce comes along with you?
Yeah, so a few different ways. So I think the first thing is connecting with your workforce. They need to trust you, right? And they need to be able to understand, you know, if they fail, if what fails, it's going to be okay, right? So, so we allow people to innovate. I mean, we created this thing we call the self-healing framework that actually does a lot of automation in our operations area, you know, for the clouds and things that we run. And that was all done by allowing people to, you know, to use open source and kind of practice and see what they could do. And there were, yeah, little bumps along the road, but if people bump, okay, then they have to know it's okay, and that where they're going to be supported, and they can go on and use that as a learning to do something better in their next level of automation. We also have culture work that we do on an ongoing basis within my organization. So we have different goals and objectives, and then we look at areas where we want to change behaviors. You know, we started with saying, hey, we want to have cloud-like characteristics in our DNA. So how do we look at our applications, our infrastructure, and actually enable them and bring them to the cloud in different ways along a journey? And that was a big thing for people. We would give out awards to say, hey, you moved your application to the cloud, or you demonstrated these cloud-like characteristics in your behavior so that we could become more self-service and we can open up our applications to the business. So we do different things with culture to actually enable people to trust us so that they can innovate in their areas, bring it forward. If it doesn't work, it becomes a learning for the organization as opposed to, you know, something that is bad.
But how do you put guardrails in place to make sure that, you know, when there is a failure, it isn't, you know, a threat to the business?
Yeah, so absolutely guardrails. You know, whatever we develop has to be developed within security, privacy guardrails, and people are very, very, you know, informed on that. So it's not like it's just people out there, you know, bringing open source in and doing development. We have strict security, we have identity, privacy. All of those guidelines have to be met. And I'll say that one of our best partners is our internal audit group that we bring along with us too on some of these things. And you know,
they don't shut you down.
No, they don't. They don't shut us down, but they do make some recommendations that the teams need to follow before we do mass deployment of it into production.
Rachel asked her panel this question, which is, do you allow the workforce to use generative AI technology within the company?
Yes, we do, as long as they're using approved technology within what we call our workplace store.
Okay.
So we have a workplace store that lists all the different titles of software that are approved for use. And if it's approved for use, yes, you can do it. There are certain types of use cases that have to go through an AI ethics review before they can be developed, so that's part of the process too. So there's a process that people can, you know, develop, but they have to make sure that it's an approved use case, that it's not violating any privacy, that they're using the right level of information, they're not using, you know, information that is, you know, protected within Adobe, that they're using public information for what they're doing. But yeah, they're guidelines, rules, and approvals.
How is generative AI used in your company, and where do you see it being used in the future? What are you most excited about?
You know, I'm most excited about what our products are doing. So if you've seen anything about the, you know, generative AI fill and what's within our Photoshop and, you know, different applications, that's extremely exciting to see that, and everybody should try it out because it's really cool. It's really cool. I've done my own little experiments with it, and I really love using it. You know, within the workforce, you know, we're trying to equip workers, you know, with a helper, right, with a second brain, and see how they can use some of the tools, you know, within their day-to-day activities, so that they can focus on, you know, the more important activities versus just the mundane activities. So that's how we're approaching it.
Do you anticipate workforce reductions through automation?
No, we've been using any of the AI tools in order to equip our workers better so that we can scale the company and actually, upscale some of the roles that we have. But workforce reduction is not part of the plan for using the tools.
That must be somewhat reassuring, I would say, to your employees. But do you encounter much fear and concern about what happens to my job?
I'll go back in time to when we started doing some of the AI work, and we said, it's not going to be workforce reduction. We're going to reskill. We're going to allow you to do other things. And I think what employees need to see is that the words that you say actually become reality. And when we started to deploy these tools, that's what we said, and it became reality. There were no workforce reductions. People were either upskilled, doing different things, or they had more time to use the tools in order to analyze and become more data-driven.
As you look ahead to the future of the company in the next, say, 5 years, what are you investing in terms of technology? What is it that you need and want to bring to the company to continue to evolve it?
So as I look at Adobe 5 years, it's really all about scale and equipping the workforce so that we have very efficient processes internally. Because if you think about it, a lot of the processes were developed for each department. If we're going to be supporting digital, the experience has to be across all the different departments. So that's one thing. Most importantly for us, it's the customer experience, right? It's the customer and the employee experience, and making sure that they have the tools and they're able to work effectively, and they're happy. They're happy employees and happy customers.
Thank you, Cynthia, for your insights today. I appreciate it.
I thank you for spending time with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you. So for our final discussion of the afternoon, we are going to talk about how to build automation projects that sell themselves, which sounds like an amazing feat. So please welcome our panelists, which are Dom Takam, who's from Delta Dental of California, Zulfi Jibanji from Allstate, and Alissa Dr. J. Abdullah from Mastercard. Please join me. Okay. First of all, Dr. J. How did Dr. J become your name? I know you have a doctorate, so that part's self-explanatory, but where's the J? What's the J?
The J is my middle initial. I started out as a radio DJ and then moved over to cybersecurity, so there's a story behind it, but I do have the PhD.
Okay, do you ever bring, playlists to the company? Do they make
Yes.
you DJ at the
No.
Okay. You draw the line at
I
that?
draw the line at mixtapes.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about your current day job then, and I want to ask each of you to share a bit about your day-to-day work. As we were talking to Cynthia, the day-to-day work that you do as the CIO of a major company.
Sure. So first of all, I'm the Deputy Chief Security Officer
Right.
for Mastercard. I am responsible for securing our infrastructure and payment networks in over 200 countries and territories and where we work. So a big remit, but a lot going on in terms of when you all think about generative AI and AI models, and we're thinking about how we secure that and how we share that secret sauce with everyone else.
Zulfi.
So I'm responsible for all digital, consumer, and business-facing technologies. And I think probably what my day-to-day is most focused on right now is changing our culture. And what I mean by that is really driving the technology team to focus on engineering excellence, go to what I call a demo culture, where we're demoing working software every 2 weeks. And the last one is kind of eliminating handoffs so we can accelerate this transformation that we're doing.
What do you mean eliminating handoffs?
So, and as I think about when a business has an idea to the time it lands in the hands of an engineer, hands on keyboards, there's a long lead time. Right? We're trying to eliminate all of that so that an idea is turned into what I call requirements or stories for an engineer in hours, not days, not weeks, not months.
Right.
And then they're ready to turn around working software in 2 weeks. Right, so that's kind of what I mean about eliminating those handoffs.
Dom, how about you?
So I'm the Chief Information and Product Officer at Delta Dental. So inside my team, I have the infrastructure, the security, and the product team. And Delta Dental's is, I would describe them as a mature company. We've been around for about 70 years. We have about 44 million members in our network. So, job one for me is making sure those systems are up and available for all of our providers and our members, making sure that we have a secure experience, and then keeping up with the business, making sure we meet the business where we are on delivering functionality.
Zulfi, compressing that timeline of the handoff, did you see that accelerate during the pandemic?
Yes and no. So there was a couple of challenges with the pandemic. The model was working well when we had everyone together. When everyone went off to their homes and to different places, there was some challenges there. I think someone mentioned earlier on the collaboration tools weren't quite working. A lot of our paired programmers were struggling because of the delays with how quickly they could see what was going on. So we had some challenges there, so we had to address those fairly quickly. But once we nailed that, the good news is the culture had already begun to bubble, right? I mean that once you get addicted to seeing working software every 2 weeks, your business partners aren't seeing PowerPoints, right? They're seeing working software, they're understanding what they're getting. It was hard to take that away, right? So we just had to solve some of those challenges with the technology and the collaboration tools that we had.
Dom, for your business, which is obviously such an in-person thing, we can't, Zoom our way to, at least I couldn't Zoom my way to fixing some of the issues I was having during the pandemic. How did you use automation to enable you to continue to do the work that your members you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about Delta Dental, we've got three sort of major constituencies. We've got our members, the 44 million members. We have 70,000 providers. So really part of what we've done through the pandemic is we describe it as trying to create a frictionless experience. If you imagine going into your provider and you're getting the service there, if we can make that process pretty much seamless behind the scenes, that's where we've been looking to focus our automation efforts to really, to create seamless service out to our member populations with our providers.
So Dr. J, as someone who is in charge of cybersecurity at Mastercard, how do you see the potential and the threat of something like generative AI?
I think it increases the number of hackers that we could potentially have. You think about the dark web, you think about for those of you who aren't very, very tech savvy, dark web being dirty internet that has free hacker software on it. Now you have generative AI, which could potentially replace a lot of the freeware that's out there. We're now creating more curious minds who are going to want to try different things. So creating spear phishing emails is not going to be difficult. You're not going to have to figure out, how do I get to the dark web or get on the dark web? How do I download a torrent? How do I do this? How do I do that? You're not going to have to figure that out. You ask ChatGPT. So it opens up opportunity for the adversary, but on the flip side of that, it opens up opportunity for cybersecurity professionals. It opens up opportunity for anyone who's in technology, because now we're just as ahead as anyone else.
Does this keep you up at night?
Absolutely.
It sounds terrifying.
It does, but I look at it from the opportunity perspective. If you don't participate, then you're impacted by, so we rather participate in. And when I think about participating in, I'm thinking about now really taking the good cybersecurity practices that we have and putting them on steroids, taking the automation that we have and putting it on steroids, and allow people to be creative. Allow now, instead of us being in a room with a whiteboard and saying, okay, where do you want to start? and then everybody's looking at each other with a dry erase marker like, I don't know, right? You skip past that because you can ask ChatGPT, how do I start blah, blah, blah at a company of blah, blah, blah to do blah, 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 and it automatically gives you something to work with. The roadmap. Now, it's the roadmap. It's not the solution, right? That's what generative AI should be. That's how it should be used. It should be used as a thought starter, not a solution ender.
Are you already seeing, people using generative AI to attack? Yeah.
Yes, we are seeing generative AI very easily replicate spear phishing emails that are more personable. So when you think about the sophistication of the adversary does well when he taps on our heartstrings and that's what makes us believe that this is really from someone who we trust.
Right.
We've seen AI models, just taking an extension from that, being able to use and develop deep fakes. Deep fakes meaning if someone is online, I would probably look like Beyonce, but I wouldn't be Beyonce. It's a deep fake. So we've seen that happen. We've seen AI models use various synthesis methods in phishing attacks, which is voicemail phishing attacks, right? And now you're picking up the phone and saying, no, Ma, is this? Ma, stop playing, and it's really not my mom.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's that level of sophistication. It's that level of outreach that I think keeps me up to make sure that we are using it in the right way on the right side so we can continue to fight those that are on the wrong side.
Right. Zulfi, you joined Allstate in the middle of a period of transformative growth, and then you started working on a new tech platform. Can you give us a little bit of insight what that was like, and whether you're seeing this return on investment that we started out the event talking about?
Yeah, so let me start a little bit with the tech platform itself. When I joined, the team had actually done a really great job about what I'll say modernizing the technology, and they had the luxury of not actually having to refactor what they had, start with a clean slate. And when you have that luxury, there's a lot you can do, and they did a great job there. I touched on it earlier on. We had to change the way we were working to take advantage of this amazing technology that the team had built. I think we are seeing the ROI. We are rolling out a completely new digital experience with new insurance products. Our goal is to hit 1/3 of the country this year. We're in a few states now, we're already seeing ROI there. I think where we're seeing the material benefit of working differently is, it was about a few months ago, we rolled out a new product, didn't like what we saw. The team was able to change it in a couple of weeks, and we went from basically no one buying the product to almost our entire customer base picking it. Simple change in experience.
What was the change?
Change in experience. The shopping experience was confusing.
Huh.
And it was leading people to either drop out of the funnel, which, as you know,
Right.
you get a lot of people in, a lot of people out at the end. So we're able to just engage them more and keep them in the funnel longer. And then they bought the product. So that was really the big change.
And how do you see generative AI playing a role in your business?
We're using it right now to drive up more what I call developer productivity. So we've integrated a lot of it into our IDEs. That way, engineers in real time as they're writing their code are getting, I'd say, guidance around maybe security issues that they're bringing into their code. Things that, and it's beginning to predict the likelihood that their change will introduce availability issues. Because it's starting to have a much better insight into what our environment looks like. I think we all know this, right? We have issues, and then it's like tribal knowledge. Who knows how this environment's built, right? So a lot of that now is built into some of our intelligence, so that the developers are getting real-time information there. From an external standpoint, we're still investigating. I think one of the things that we're fairly proud of is something we call Tell My Story. So I'm sure, as all of you know, when you call in for a claim, how many times are you asked the same thing, right? You talk to the initial person who took your claim, then the adjuster, then the repair shop, right, it goes on and on. We have something called Tell My Story now, where you pretty much say what happens. AI kind of pays attention to all of that, and then basically says, okay, this is the only two things that is really missing here. I'll have the claims adjuster call the person and deal with it. If there's nothing missing, we'll automate the claim and you're on your way.
Huh. And that's working. That's effective now.
Yeah, it's we've had it in probably 6 or 8 months now, and we're seeing a lot of benefit out of it.
Right. Dom, what about for you? How are you using generative AI?
So
if at all?
we're not using generative AI, as someone said earlier, infancy is probably the right word for us. And we have a ton of opportunity. And I came across some financial services into healthcare, and we throw a lot of people kind of at the phones to handle that kind of complex kind of claim adjudication. And I think our best opportunity is around intelligent contact center support. We have well-curated desktop-level procedures on how a certain claim is adjudicated and all the data that's there. And to me, I'm pretty excited about the use of private large language models, train it on our desktop-level procedures, and create that super agent that our internal agents can rely on to allow them. And anybody who's worked in the contact center business knows that the attrition in a contact center it's a lot. So we can bring, again, an intelligent agent to get our contact center folks up to speed really quickly. I think we'll see some real bang for the buck quickly.
So claim adjudication for you is different than obviously for your business, Zulfi, where, as you say, you have to, I've been through this, we've all been through this, where you had to repeat everything. But for you, Dom, I mean, these are complex, potentially complex issues that you have to sort out through to understand the claim.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the exciting thing or opportunities, and especially dental insurance, is real-time adjudication.
Right.
Pretty much, we know you've gone to the dentist, we know the treatment plan that you've had. Why don't we adjudicate it in real time? Really push that experience, make a digital experience, just like everyone else is having kind of a real-time experience, and push that up the stack. And that's intelligent augmentation. We've got a great set of rules that work asynchronously today. If we can push that automation up the stack, again, you have the experience of paying there and then as you go through the provider. That's a big opportunity too.
Right. So for someone like me, and I'm not saying this is happening to me, but it is, at my dentist,
What's
right?
the provider's name?
Where I'm trying to figure out what's covered, what's not covered.
Yeah.
This can help sort that out in faster time.
Everybody who knows medical or dental insurance knows one of the biggest pains that is out there is called insurance verification.
Yes.
What am I entitled to based on the group insurance that I have? And it is tremendously complicated. It's based on the state you're going to, the provider type you're going to, the company that you work for, and then eventually the payer. Bringing that set of logic together, and again, in a real-time experience, that's where I'm talking about that real-time experience up front. So as you go to that provider, you know that you're going to be covered or not covered. That can then influence your decision. But that's a huge opportunity to close that gap and make that decision criteria in your hands.
That would be amazing. Please bring that to us. Dr. J, you've talked a little bit about some of the opportunities and the risks of generative AI. Internally, are employees allowed to use generative AI within the company structure? And how do you make sure that doesn't go out of control?
Yes, we have, some people say guardrails. I'm a cybersecurity professional, so it makes it seem really, really scary. So I say partnerships with internal organizations to make sure that that employees are using generative AI in the right way, as, like I said, a whiteboard and not a solution ender. Right. We have data responsibility principles that, when generative AI immediately boomed, and which we're still in the middle of that boom, but in the very, very beginning, we reminded our employees of our data responsibility principles that revolve not just around security, but privacy, but transparency, social responsibility. Those are, really key tenets to making sure that we're using it in the right way, and that we are continuing to create those right partnerships so we can innovate with speed, but to be frictionless, because that was a great word that was used, is to be frictionless in all of that.
You talked about some of the new threats that generative AI can pose, which are frankly kind of chilling. How how is it? What are some examples, if you can share, of how it could enhance cybersecurity?
Oh, that's absolutely actually very easy. Well, you know what? Let me pull that back a little bit because I want to pull it back from just generative AI. That's
Right.
just a sliver
And
of it.
automation.
We'll talk about just AI in general and automation. There's a lot of threat detection that can happen much faster than me sitting with a group of analysts monitoring our network. We have a fusion center at Mastercard that monitors transactions. We do over 125 billion transactions a year. We have to make sure that there's fraud prevention in that. We saved last year, just from over the past 3 years, just from using AI, $35 billion of fraud.
Wow.
Saved ourselves from $35 billion of fraud.
That you would have had to pay out.
That we would have had to pay out, either through some spear phishing email, either through a deep fake, and those are like really solid examples that I have in my mind right now. But we know that as organizations are partnering with cybersecurity companies, with us, all of us that are in here, we're embedding AI. We have to also turn it on, right? We do a lot of shelfware. We'll partner with someone, and the CIO from Adobe, I'm sure she has a lot of experience with this. But we'll partner with someone, with a vendor, and we'll only turn on that one little thing that we really liked about their product, instead of looking more broad and saying, wait a minute, they have AI enabled, they have machine learning, they have all of these different great collaborations that could help further all of us. We got to turn it on, and I think that's where we'll see the biggest challenge, because you'll want to turn on the right things in the right places in order to enable your infrastructure to be as powerful as it can.
Zulfi, how do you see the potential for automation, broadly speaking, to continue, and generative AI, since that's the sexy discussion going on right now? How do you see that continuing to transform your business? You gave a very powerful, clear-cut, real world example of the storytelling aspect. But what else are you looking at in the future?
So I think the advantage we have with automation, especially now, and with the I'll say the digital worlds colliding, is just simplifying our processes. So I'll give you an example. When someone's in an accident or has a claim, we had all these very complicated processes about how do I get an estimate, and so on and so on. It became fairly simple, right? A consumer either wants to be fixed or paid. That's it. Right? Figure it out from there, right? Simplify the processes. So I think that gave us the advantage of saying, if someone wants to be fixed, don't even waste their time trying to get an estimate, et cetera. Send them to a repair shop. We have a network. Make it super simple for them, and take out all the steps that we had in the between. If they want to get paid, then we have something called quick photo claims. If they can take a picture, send it in, we'll estimate it and give them a check, right? So it's really driving the ability to simplify our processes.
Do you use automation and AI in assessing that photo, for example?
For the simple
damage?
ones we do, and I think that's where the advantage is now for generative AI and just AI in general. It starts getting complicated when you can't see the damage, right? And so, so we're experimenting a lot with models to say, how can you better predict what you can't see? We have, I think it's now over 1 trillion miles of telematics data that is giving us a lot of insight into how people drive, what happens when accidents happen, how many parties were involved, and so on. Because typically when people tell you that, they're not always, they don't really remember, right? It's a traumatic event and so on. So I think we have a huge amount. I think we're just scratching the surface, right? We have a huge amount of potential. I think our challenge is just the volume of data that we're dealing with.
Right.
I mean, it's just massive.
Right.
Trying to get the models trained, learn quickly, and then and simply the compute power. I think those are all beginning to collide with us a little bit.
But let me think like a hacker really quick, because what happens when I can use generative AI, tell it to send me a picture of the front, bumper severely damaged so I can send it in to file my claim. So that's what, the adversary is thinking like that.
Yeah.
We have to test our own AI models. We have to test ourselves and everything that we're using to make sure we're using it and we're training our models to continue to be more sophisticated than the adversary.
That's a really good question.
Yeah,
What's
and
your
actually
answer?
I love that because we do this.
Stir the pot.
Yeah, we do this kind of red team thinking all the time,
Yeah.
right? So.
Sorry.
So no, it's great. I talked about the fact that we have telematics data.
Right.
We check where was the picture taken, when was it taken? Can I correlate this to the telematics data that I already have about when the accident happened, right? And actually, we catch quite a bit of fraud this way.
Are you seeing more along the lines of what she's talking
Yeah,
about?
absolutely.
Wow.
Fake pictures.
Really?
All the time. Yeah.
Oh my
God. And as sorry, I forgot to name the CEO of Adobe, right? With now generative
Cynthia.
AI in Photoshop, right?
Right.
Playing with
Yeah.
those pictures. There's a ton of potential there.
So
to
it's her fault? Dom, you talked about being in a mature industry. Does generative AI have the potential to transform your business?
Definitely. I see kind of a question down there, and it's about the data that we train it on. We absolutely have the opportunity to revolutionize our business, and I like the title of this whole session, Intelligent Automation. I think it behooves us all to think about where we intelligently automate. Not all automation is good. If you go and automate a bad process, it just makes a bad process faster. So I think we've got a great opportunity to sort of rank and stack and find the intelligent opportunities to automate.
That's a great way to end this session. Thank you so much, all three of you. You can. And thank you all for joining this briefing on, as Dom was saying, intelligent automation, and I hope that you've enjoyed these conversations. Thanks again to our speakers and to my colleague for moderating here. And I want to thank again our sponsor, IBM, for making this briefing possible. If you'd like more information on them, please visit the resources tab on our event website. And most of all, thank you for attending and being engaged. And if you want to watch any part of this event, you can go to bloomberglive.com to view on demand. Now, join us for cocktails and networking on the rooftop of this building. And thanks very much.